I came to America to shoot a documentary on cannabis, on growing cannabis, on healing with cannabis, on smoking cannabis, on curing my fucking IBS with cannabis. I did organize a bunch of interviews, and I'm risking a bunch of people's safety, including my own, in trying to shoot this documentary. And I'm a fucking naive idiot.
What do you want to know about weed?
If you look at the wall back there, there's the therapeutic charts. It's more than just, smoking weed.
Spoken, it sounds so sweet. I thought I heard the shuffle of angels' feet. He put one hand upon my head. Great God, the mighty, let me tell you what he said.
Damn, G, the spot's getting hot. So how the fuck am I supposed to make a knot? Police looking at niggas through a microscope. In LA, everybody and their mama sell dope. They trying to stop it. So what the fuck can I do to make a profit? Catch a flight to St. Louis. That's cool, cause nobody knows.
Oh God, the mighty, let me tell the news. My head got wet in midnight dew. Great God, I've been down on my bending knee, talking to me from Galilee.
There's a few places that have wised up. There's a few places that have legalized it, that are actually making money on it, because it doesn't hurt a soul. It never has, it never will.
We're about to interview the most important man in cannabis, in my opinion. Jodrey, the Darwin of dope. And, I don't know why the hell he wants to talk to me. It's just another example of the quality of character that this man is. I am nobody. I'm not famous, I'm not well known at all, quite the opposite. I asked him 8 months ago for an interview when I was in America. He was unable to provide me an interview at the time. He was one of the very few cannabis industry professionals who actually got back to me. And not only did he get back to me, but he got back to me saying, yes, let's shoot some film. And I was leaving. It was the day I was leaving America. Jodrey got back to me. And I was devastated because he's my favorite person in this entire industry to listen to and to absorb knowledge from. And I firmly believe he is on a level spiritually and philosophically and intellectually above most of the industry. I believe he comes from an ethical and intelligent point of view. He is not only there for the plant, he is there for the industry, and he is there for the health. These are the three important things that I believe are necessary for us to start a new industry correctly from the ground up. So, yeah, we're going to call him. Holy shitballs. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, mate. How are you?
I'm doing good. Hey, let me shut off this fan outside. Give me 1 second.
Sure, mate. There we go. Cool. Good morning, Kevin. Or afternoon.
How are you?
Good, man. I've been up since 2 o'clock this morning waiting for this.
What time is it right now in Australia?
It's 20 past 5 in the morning.
Gotcha.
To me, you're one of the most important minds in cannabis. You live in Humboldt County. It's part of the Emerald Triangle. It's the birthplace of, in my opinion, the best cannabis in the world. Kev, can you tell me about your beginnings? How did you get into weed? How did it all start?
For me, cannabis started, the area that I grew up in New England was a high-level trafficking place. So you saw a lot of international trafficking occur there. And that ability to be around that level of cannabis just got me fascinated with all the different varietals that were coming in from the country. So all the stuff at that time was coming in from overseas, coming in off of the ships. My neighborhood was a fishing village, and the fishermen would bring in the cannabis and disperse it. And I was able to start to be around all these different varietals, and it was just an incredible opportunity because it let me see all the different strains of cannabis that were coming in globally. And that globalization of it let me see the foundation of cannabis as we know it. That would have been, in the late 70s, early 80s. And so I started cultivating outside, 81, 82. In 83, I got busted for growing outdoor, and I got dragged out of high school in handcuffs and spent the rest of 11th grade in juvenile prison. So I went from eating lunch in high school to eating supper in training school. And when I got out of training school, I was right back into cannabis again. And then I had a family member that had caught an extremely long prison sentence for criminal stuff. So my cousin caught a 200-year sentence. And a lot of my friends were doing a lot of time for cannabis. So for me, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I wanted to spend the rest of my life going in and out of jail. And I ended up going in the military. And while I was in the military, I was a salvage diver. And so I used to get sent out on these jobs with the DEA and the DOJ in the mid-'80s. So 85, 86, 87. I was working for the Coast Guard, but I was getting to do these operations for the DOJ and the DEA in international level drug interdiction. And when I was on one of those missions, I got to talk to the people that we were raiding, and they were also divers, and they were also former military. And they said, hey, the future is going to be a lot different than it is now. You should go back to the life you had before you went in the service. And I started to realize that, the stuff that I had done prior was okay. It was just that it was so criminally persecuted that I started studying botany, and I started looking at plant science. And when I got out of the military, the day I got out of the military, I bought all my grow lights in 89.
What kept you going back, though? I mean, yes, these guys recommended it, but I get this feeling from everything I've seen about you and read about you that you've got a passion for this. It's not a simple...
Oh, man. Yeah, it wasn't simple at all. It was that I loved. I think it was that my mom was a scientist, and so I think I have an inquisitive mind. And when I was first exposed to cannabis in the neighborhood, I was fascinated by the people that were using it because they seemed a lot happier than everybody else. And so I wanted to find out why they were so happy as weed smokers. And once I started to experience all the different cannabis from around the world, I started to really see the usefulness, the applicability of it, because all the different varietals had different effects. And based off of where in the world the cannabis came from, the people had chosen these things to accentuate the quality of their life. And so as you started to go through all these different varietals, you started to find all these different experiences. And it did something for me that was unique in that it let me understand a social bridge, where I think cannabis creates the greatest social bridge, where when individuals consume it together, for a brief moment, they forget about their differences and they find a commonality, which is the appreciation of that cannabis they're consuming. And at the same time, the cannabis changes your brain waves and makes you more receptive to the other person's point of view. You have a greater level of tolerance for differences. And fundamentally, I believed, and I still do, that I love people. And I like people, diverse people. I like you to be not the same as me, because that's what makes the human population so unbelievably resilient and adaptable, is those incredible facets of the human. And cannabis is something that when you consumed it with people, you were allowed to really, for a minute, just appreciate each other. And so I saw this beauty and the elegance in how individuals that consume cannabis hung out on this really elegant, gentle, peaceful level. And the neighborhood I was in was wild and a lot of hard crime. But people who were consuming cannabis for a moment were completely out of that state of mind. And to me, it was this escape from a rough reality and an appreciation for these finer little details that you don't get to see. And it let so many dissimilar people have this moment of connection that I was like, wow, it's the human bond. And so I saw cannabis as this substance that allowed me to meet and connect with all kinds of different people and really feel human. And I think that that's one of the reasons why, I've been such an advocate for cannabis over the years, is that it allows people for a minute to just relax, put down preconceptions, put down misconceptions, and just enjoy the experience and enjoy the people they're experiencing it with.
I think that's a wonderful perspective, Kev. Look, it sounds to me like through your investigation, it seems very similar to your appreciation for people, the diversity of cannabis, the diversity of people. Are these two linked for you?
Oh, completely. I think cannabis allowed me to meet so many different people because I was from New England, and that's just such a predominantly white area. And cannabis touches everybody, and the drug business touches everybody. You get to meet all the races, you get to meet all the different sexual orientations, religious orientations. And when you start to meet people and you get to hang out with them, you begin to see them as people. And it allowed me to really start to expand my social network dramatically in a really elegant manner, where you started to be able to see the beauty in all these different individuals, just like with cannabis, because cannabis is so widely spread across the planet, and the people who cultivated it and brought it with them and cultivated it for their specific needs based off of what life they were living. So if you look at equatorial cannabis, it's usually spiritually driven. And if you look at cannabis coming in the 30 to 45 range, it's a lot more CBD based because your life was tougher in those harder high desert environments. And so some cannabis was meant to give you euphoria. Other cannabis was meant to sedate you so that you could cope with the difficulty of your life. And so cannabis had all these applicabilities. No cannabis better than any other cannabis. It was all ideally suited for the people who cultivated it and developed it. And so when you start to see that, you start to realize that if all cannabis is good, then fundamentally all people are good.
Okay. So I have this little theory which I wanted to put to you, which I firmly believe you've already mentioned, but I'll just lay it out, is that I want to know your thoughts on the symbiosis of cannabis and the breeder. She's a plant, in my opinion, that has evolved with humans. She gave us a spiritual and personal insights, and we gave her rapid evolution. Do you think that the cannabis plant and humans are connected spiritually?
Oh, I completely do. I used to believe it was just in terms of consuming it as a drug, where we used it as a drug, and that was my understanding. But when I started to get into CBD research about 11 years ago, when we started really getting into the first CBD release in America came out of my shop. The AC/DC came out of our shop. What I started to learn from the physicians that were involved in these studies was that the existence of the endocannabinoid system and how humans had evolved, consuming cannabis as a food source. The hemp seed was so crucial, and that it stimulated the endocannabinoid system, which helped give us a better health and vitality. And so humans moved cannabis around the globe to survive. It's almost like a primary food source for your omegas, and also for the stimulation of the endo system, which keeps your immune system healthy. And so sometimes I wonder if cannabis is a higher level plant and really we serve it, because cannabis is the most widely distributed plant on the planet. There is no plant that has a greater range of growth than cannabis, and it's all through human trafficking, where humans moved it. And the part that I like is that over 10,000 years ago, it was people moving it. But over the last couple hundred years, it was slaves. It was slaves that moved it. People that were in slavery, Indians that were leaving India to work as slaves, smuggled it. Africans brought it with them from Africa when they came over. And these cannabis plants were a risk to their life if they were caught with them. And they had such a belief in what it did for them and how it made them feel and how it increased the quality of their life, that it was almost like an essential component to their lives. And so I started to really take a look at it differently when I started to have physicians explain to me this relationship between endocannabinoid and cannabis. And endocannabinoids are in all mammalian species. The endocannabinoid system's even in mollusks. So it's this system that is primal. It goes back in the dawn of time of creation. And I don't think we understand it very well overall, and we've covered up these things because it allows us to keep the human at a lower level of health and vitality. Therefore, it's easier to manipulate the people. And so the question really is, is like, did the chicken come before the egg or the egg before the chicken? Did humans cultivate cannabis, or did cannabis have such an incredible value that it forced humans to move it with them wherever they went, because with the absence of it, the quality of their lives diminished? And if you look at all the ancient cultures, that it was in their lives.
Yeah, excellent.
When they even go to the pyramids, they find a bag of it in the pharaoh's pocket. So when you're burying the pharaoh with the bag of it so that he can go into the next world with the right tools, that's telling you that at the highest level of society in our past, that it was a fundamental component of their life. It just lets you understand that, we had a radically different relationship with cannabis than we ever have been taught. And so as I go forward with it, I just kind of look at it like that it's trying to understand, how do you use cannabis correctly for you by choosing what types fit your needs. And then now we understand that we can consume it on a non-psychoactive level. And all of a sudden, it's one of the greatest health tonics in modern history.
Yeah.
So we are inexorably woven together.
Excellent.
I don't think you can separate people in cannabis.
No, neither me. Look, what was this initial spark or turning point that turned you spiritually and philosophically from, I guess, a black market drug dealer to the aficionado and I'm going to say it again, this Darwin-esque expert that you are today, Kev?
I was very fortunate in that I was involved in the first CBD studies in America. And I had a dispensary that I operated, and William Courtney, a physician, came in and said, I have this hypothesis that humans have evolved consuming cannabis as an edible in a non-psychoactive form. And his hypothesis was so reaching that it almost made me think he was reaching too far. But I realized that if he was on point in any respect, then the benefits to humankind would be immense. And so I allowed him to utilize my facility, and we dedicated a portion of the canopy to just R&D. And I was involved in dealing with all the individuals that came in as the test people. And as I started to have these individuals consuming non-psychoactive cannabis, and I started to watch cancerous tumors disappear, I started to watch rheumatoid arthritis disappear, I started to see an overall level of health in people that were non-cannabis users. We basically catch you at the end of your rope. So you exhaust all modern Western medicine, and because you're in such a situation, you're like, look, I'll try anything at this point. When we got a hold of you and we put you through the program, and it was all free, it was all subsidized, so this way there wasn't a financial stake in it to get inaccurate information. It was just very cut and dry. It let me see a truth that I couldn't deny, that the cannabis interaction with the human was so complete that it radically changed how I saw cannabis from that point forward. And I went on to become one of the largest, probably the largest CBD distributor in history for as much CBD as we passed out for free.
And that was 2008, roughly, was it, Kev?
Yeah, that had been about 2007, 2008. And that was really, that's funny because, you look at CBD right now and it's a buzzword in every circle. But at that time, that cannabinoid had really basically just been discovered, and looked at. And no one had any desire for it because none of that pot got you high. And we had to actually convince people to consume it. And lo and behold, it had the ability to really transcend what it was for initially for us, which was health reasons. And what it did was it so changed how people perceived cannabis users. Because if you were benefiting from non-psychoactive cannabis, all of a sudden, maybe you realize that people that had, I call it mental issues, but basically, depression, anxiety, those things can be worked with psychoactive cannabis. And it allowed people to suddenly start to change their views of people who used cannabis in the manners that had been stigmatized by the press. And so when they did in the 20s, they did Reefer Madness, and they went after the cannabis users so that the major corporations could control the hemp industry. They made it to where people who consumed cannabis in a psychoactive manner were basically lunatics and deranged killers, and it was only in the hands of blacks and Mexicans, and very racially driven, very small-minded view. Well, they did such a good job that it basically created that pattern in human society that's what cannabis users were. And I saw CBD as this tool that I was going to use to pry that bullshit right off the top. Because if I helped you with your arthritis and I was able to help out a family member with tumor, then they would suddenly say, wow, cannabis is applicable. And then they would say, well, but I'm not getting high. And I'd be like, yeah, but if you had depression, would it be so bad if you were suddenly not depressed? And it allowed them to understand that their situation was no different than the other. And what you found is people with pain issues are prioritized on pain. People with depression prioritized on depression. Whatever your problem is, you're basically myopic on all other problems. But because cannabis was so broad-based, it allowed people to be able to get healed. And because I wasn't selling them the product, and I was explaining to them that the only way I could do all this free work was to sell psychoactive cannabis, because I was subsidizing everything, they started to realize that they wanted to thank me, but I wouldn't let them. I'd make them thank the cultivators that paid for the pot at the store, and they'd have to thank the people that bought the clones, because really I was just an instrument in this process. It wasn't me at all. I'm just a tool. I'm a good tool, but I'm a tool. And I wanted the people that were what we call the mainstream to understand that the users of cannabis were not this malignant group, and that they were actually very aware of what was taking place, and they would pay full price for their products, knowing that the profit that came from the sales was being then turned into subsidies to take care of the people who couldn't afford the other form of cannabis. And it allowed us to have this radical change in how people began to get along with cannabis in general. And a number of companies wanted me to hold those genetics back. They didn't want me to release it open source. And they were like, you're crazy. You're opening up Pandora's box and you could get all the money. But the problem is that nobody knew how to make the money at that time. They all theorized that they would figure it out. And I understood that if we waited until they figured out how to make the money, we would lose the momentum, and we wouldn't be able to get people into experiencing it. And when you help someone who's desperate and you don't charge them and you're kind to them, they look at you differently. And I wanted to change the views, not just of cannabis, but of the people of cannabis, so that they realize that just because we use cannabis doesn't mean we're bad citizens. And that my desire for psychoactive usage today doesn't preclude me from using it non-psychoactively tomorrow. And so a lot of the CBD people, first, they didn't want to get high at all. And then eventually they said, hey, I'm feeling a little bit anxious. I'm feeling a little depressed. Maybe you could recommend something to do that. And so pretty soon they became cannabis users, not psychoactive or non-psychoactive. That's like black and white people. No, you're all people. And when you get past some of the semantics and you can look at the truth of it, it allows you to make much more accurate views, and then you're able to broaden your entire horizon. And that was my goal. And even though, we didn't corner the CBD market and we didn't lock it up under our hands, we released enough CBD into the world that almost every CBD varietal out there right now is stemmed from that initial work projects. If you DNA it through Philo's Galaxy, you can see the trail of the truth. So it lets me know that the broad benefit that I wanted to achieve was achieved. And that was reward in itself. You always want money because you got to pay your bills. But rarely in life do you get the opportunity to do a greater good. And I realized I had this incredible opportunity to do something that would absolutely blow the lid right off of this fantasy that we were all malicious, malignant individuals, and that cannabis had no benefit. And so the AIDS patients in San Francisco drove Prop 215. The people that were aware that when they gave their friends with AIDS cannabis, it let them eat. That began legitimacy for psychoactive use for appetite stimulation. And then we utilized that same mentality of sharing, open caring, to get people to see cannabis as a bigger picture.
Yeah, well, you did a brilliant job, Kev. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
It's obviously, it's affected the entire planet, which not only did you do something great, you did something on a grand scale. So I would like to personally thank you. What are some of the key steps you took to get to where you are today as the owner and operator of Wonderland Nursery, one of the largest, most diverse cannabis libraries on the planet?
You know what I did that allowed this to happen more than anything was that I was a very open source individual with information and genetics. And my experiences as someone who was getting dropped out of helicopters in the middle of the ocean on billions of dollars of drugs let me understand that the world market was hundreds of tons at a time. And so when you looked across at your neighbor and thought he was your competitor, you were sadly mistaken. He was really more your collaborator. And so I've always had that approach in all my commercial years, from say 89 forward. Prior, I was just, a young kid in the neighborhood with all the guys. we were cool then too. But once I got into like the ability to really be in commercial cannabis, what I did was I shared my my work. So if I was digging into stuff and I was trying to understand a thing, I would share it with other people. And if I came across premium genetic material, I would share it with other people because I wanted you to have the ability to do well too. And I was ostracized for that for a long time because they were like, you know, you're giving away all the secrets and you're sharing all the valuable stuff. But I wasn't stealing the secrets from anybody, and I wasn't stealing anybody's valuable stuff. I was scouring the land for the things that I needed, and I was doing my own research. I wasn't stealing anybody's data. So in my mind, I had the complete right to say whatever I wanted because I wasn't plagiarizing you. I was coming up with my own concepts based off of agricultural models. So I took a look at how they cultivate in a commercial model, and I started to figure out how to trickle that knowledge down into smaller level cannabis production so that people who wanted to produce cannabis for themselves would be efficient and would be successful. And if I gave them good genetics that worked, then they would be able to get relief or a mental situation, or if they were trying to sell it, they'd have financial success, because I wasn't trying to be the gatekeeper. And lo and behold, what it did was it allowed me to be an influencer on a tremendous number of people who subsequently grew up to be very successful people in cannabis. And because I had been so sharing and good to them, they subsequently gave me access to all the new things they had. And so what happened was I completed the circle. I started the ball rolling, and the people that I got rolling many of them became very successful in cannabis. And hey, we have things we'd like to share with you. We have new technologies, new techniques, new concepts that we want to share with you back because we're grateful that you were, you know, good to us when we were nobody. And so I basically try to take people that are considered societal nobodies. And nowadays, if you're not on Instagram and you don't have fancy stuff, you know, you don't have any rank. But to me, that's not the truth at all. That to me, I mean, really fundamentally, all people have value. And I basically judge you on, can you be polite enough while we speak so that we have the ability to communicate? And if you can do that, I'll help you to the best degree I can. And what it did is it really influenced people on being better, like cannabis ambassadors, where they said, hey, you carry this in a different way. We want to emulate that because you helped us with no expectation of return. And every time we needed help, we could contact you and you would give us information, or you would put us into new genetics, or you would hook us up with people. And what it did is it built this massive body of people that had done really well off all the work I was doing. And in return, they helped further me. And so they furthered my reputation. They introduced me to other people. And then when I got into the dispensary industry, I was somebody that started to be one of the first real seed dealers for all these small breeders, where I said, listen, let me be your dealer. Let me carry your seed stock. Let me promote your stuff. Let me take clones from your company and sell them. But I gave everybody credit. So I never took anybody's work and said it was mine. If it was mine, I'm taking credit. But if it's not mine, I make sure I give you full credit. And I make sure that I allow people to access you without having to go through me as the gatekeeper. So that way you can benefit, and then you can share your ability, skills, good intent. And what it did was it created an incredible number of people that was successful because of it. And it's almost counter to the normal business model of today, which is totally exclusive, not inclusive. And because I did it that manner, even though it was looked at as I was a nut to give away all these secrets, I realized that I was digging up new material every day, and I was digging up new genetics constantly. So if you're living off of what you did 20 years ago, then really you're a stale individual. And for me, it's just never ending. So I can give you all that I have today, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give you all I have next week, because I'm going to get 7 more days of info. And it allowed me to really be able to stay alive all these years and stay very current, because I'm so interested and fascinated by cannabis in general that I'm not relying on anybody to do my homework. I go home and do my homework myself because that's what I like to do. But I really love to share. And even though it was not accepted in the past to give away techniques and to share genetics, because I wasn't stealing your stuff and I wasn't stealing your genes, I didn't have anybody that could really tell me no. And it opened up every door that I could have ever possibly dreamt of opening, but I never intended to open them like that. I didn't even have that as a plan. It was really just a behavioral mechanism. You know, it's like if you see an old lady in the parking lot, you know, struggling with her groceries, you know, you go help her out and then you go shop. You didn't help her out hoping that maybe she has a relative that'll reward you in the future. That's not, I don't think that's really how people operated in the past. And I think that we've been educated so much on scarcity and abundance that we all believe that everything's scarce and that we have to behave in that way. And the truth of it is if we understand there's plenty and we share it, there'll be more.
Beautiful. I mean, for me, it's a reason why I smoke joints. I love sharing the spiritual high of cannabis with others. But would that be true for you as well? Is it part of the sharing process?
Oh, completely. It's the fact that we get to live up. I think human life is best shared. I think most people in their mind, when they watch TV, success is that you get out of the society and you get to live in a gated house on top of a mountain by yourself. But I'm like, that's pretty lonely and boring. And you want to see new people come in your life. You want new ideas. You want new perspectives. You need to listen to new music. You need to see new food. You need to constantly be made aware that the earth is so diverse and so ever-changing that if you don't allow yourself to be part of it, you'll miss out on all of it. Mm. And, you know, same thing. I'm a joint smoker, too. And to burn a joint with somebody it's take your time. There's no rush on passing it back. You want to take 2, 3, take 5 puffs off it. I don't care. Puff it. As a matter of fact, if you want, I'll roll another one and we can both smoke. It allows you both to just enjoy each other in this really, really non-aggressive manner. You're not looking for anything from each other except the company. And hopefully you get some good conversation. And even if you don't get to converse because you don't speak the same language, you feel the spiritual connection. And I think that that's what's lost in our society right now is that people, they don't understand that you're coming from another country. You're the same as I am if I went into your country. If you're a different color, you're different religious backgrounds, fundamentally you are still human being. And that component is so crucial because that's what allows you to always develop. Otherwise you get stale. And I call it stylized. You become stylized. You only know one style. And that limits you in the long term. And so for me, I try to maintain that the one thing I try to stay stylized in is that I try to be kind. That's not trendy. That's not something I want to change anytime soon.
It definitely comes through, Kev. This is the first time we've spoken, and look, I'll be honest. I've been disappointed with a lot of the cannabis people that I've met. Like you said, some people don't have the right motive. They don't have the right drive. It's quite obvious that you're honest and a truthful guy, and that comes through. Kev, you mentioned before about the industry. We haven't seen a new industry since the .com era, and that was something very different to cannabis. This is the brand new industry. What I see from you, I see a man who knows that there's a new industry about to start, and to me it looks like you're trying to make the right moves, the right moral moves from the beginning, so we don't end up with an industry like the pharmaceutical industry or the weapons industry or any and every other industry that we seem to have to deal with. From the way that you talk about ethical grow methods to the way you talk about just ethically dealing with people. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that what people fail to realize is that the majority of individuals aren't so special in terms of financial or education or socioeconomic socio rank. They're just regular people. And that group of people are the people that I'm really targeting with all the work. Because what I want to do is I want to empower them with the knowledge that I've gained out over all these years to allow them to be able to understand how to function and make good choices in the future. And as long as my information is technically accurate, then I'll always get that 10% of the right-hand side of the bell curve. Because ultimately, I'm on point with what I'm saying. So, you can research it and chew it up, but it's accurate. But what I do is I put it into a context that lets normal individuals, people that just need benefit, people that want to experience it. That's my demographic, because those are the individuals that make up the majority. And I think that with so many of these industries that you see, they're forgotten. They're people that are used to support financially, but they get very little gain from it. So these massive industries doing all this work, there's really very little trickle down. And so you have a CEO that makes, 3,000 times what the worker makes. And you have incredibly quick turnarounds and turnovers. And every bit of information that comes out is all designed to sell a product. And for me, what I wanted to do was share a lifetime of work. And because I have a good success historically in it, it lets me have an opinion that you can't deny. So you can't deny my success, which allows me not to be invalidated, but I'm not catering to that group so that hopefully I get to be part of the special club. The special club is the planet you're living on. That's the special club. And I want the people that I consider normal, regular, everyday people to benefit from this work. And maybe that's the legacy you leave, that you really did do a lot of work, and it was able to be utilized in a manner by individuals that could benefit from it. Not just I got paid and now I'm out of it and now I'm going to talk about goodwill, where I want the goodwill to be first. And that's just a personal desire, but I think it's the one that's needed for the majority, because I think that most people are being really taken advantage of. The marketing is always very directed. If you study psychology, you can see how they manipulate it. If you take a look at the imagery situated, you can take a look at that. And to me, that's just an abuse. It's an abuse of power. It's kind of like studying economics so that you can manipulate individuals. It's kind of like understanding interest rates, compound interest rates, and no one else in the room does, and you put them into these type of contracts. What you're doing is you're a social predator. And that's not what I'm looking for. That's not the life I want to live, and it's not the life I want my children to remember me for. And when I realized that I had this incredible ability to get into the mainstream, I wanted them to be able to have a trust in me where they understood I'm not here just to benefit myself. I'm here as a representation of a concept, that cannabis was something that allowed you to be able to have this beautiful life and share and have time. It's a concept, way more than just we got paid. And if I can put that out there, then what it does, it allows all these individuals to start see some of this, and maybe it'll get them to think. And when they go into new industries and when they create the new world we're in, maybe this is a moral block. Maybe this is an ethical block in their foundation, where they get to use this and say, hey, there was somebody that I used to listen to or follow who had all these opportunities to be in control of things, and instead he released them freely, and fundamentally the public benefited from it, and I benefited too. It's not the commercial model, and so I don't think it makes me attractive so much to the commercial group, but that's not the people that I'm seeking to really speak to. It's individuals that I more than anything, I'd like to see you be able to not to have to go to the store. I would like to see you be able to grow the cannabis in your yard, be able to understand how to choose it, understand how to use it, understand how to find the processes to be able to get it into a form you need, so that you're not financially victimized by the industry in using cannabis. Cannabis was something that was widespread and basically free, and then it became unbelievably expensive. Now it's unbelievably regulated, and fundamentally the people have to be able to be empowered enough to understand with information, how do you use it? What do you do? And if I could leave that as a mark, then I succeeded beyond my wildest dreams.
I definitely think you've done that already, man, and you keep doing it, which is awesome. I really admire that. What I admire most about you is your moral intellect, Kev. You seem to have an approach that is based on what's good for Mother Nature, what's good for the human health, what's good for humans in general. Most growers only seem to care about yield over clean product. I've always struggled with understanding why growers want to just, jam that plant full of every single thing with a label and a bottle and some sort of, horrible input that just ends up turning the product to shit at the end. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is because of the imagery that you've been presented with since birth, especially in the U.S., where at all costs succeed, because ultimately the checkbook dictates the reality. And that isn't really true. It's quality of life dictates the reality. And when you get to be a cannabis producer for time, it starts to really slow down your quest for the money component, because you really start to, just like with animals too, for a lot of people, if you work with animals as a farmer, you start to see the beauty of the life. And in that, you realize that you can't get the beauty through excessively pushing anything. Once we get to a production parameter, anything past that is in imbalance, and there has to be a sacrifice. And so when it comes to, heavy production in cannabis, a lot of it is what materials we use, chemicals we use, attitudes we use. And that's not a sustainable situation. Those are all short-term to me. And living in Humboldt County helped, because Humboldt was, one of the most aggressive producers of cannabis in the world. But the older people that I was really, motivated by in terms of like spiritual use of cannabis and clean production of cannabis, they were organic food growers. They lived a very holistic lifestyle, and everything mattered. And it changed how I viewed food. It changed how I view all products. And I realized that, cannabis is an experience, and more than the weight of the product, it's the quality of the product, and the quality can't be faked. The input, like they say with data, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. So organic in Australia means no pesticides. When I was recently in Washington, organic means organic certified pesticides are used. So that was obviously a bit of a shock to me. Is organic just a buzzword, man? Is it just some corporate stamp that they stick on a label to make us feel better about using a bottle that they can then sell us?
Oh, no, completely. It is a buzzword. It's an expensive marketing tool. And the truth of it is I prefer the words biologically based. Yeah. That means living stuff. So I only use living bugs to take care of all my pest problems. So I use various forms of predatory bugs in the root zone and on the plant. We use almost no spray at all unless we're having to work with the population. And the spray we use is mushroom extracts and fermented plant extracts, things that you could put all over you and have no issues if it was on you every day. It's biologically based because I don't want to destroy the world I'm around in the production of cannabis too. And so, when you start to take a look at this, you have to use common sense approach. And the people love labels and they love certifications because it gives them a surety, because we've been taught not to trust each other. But in Humboldt, you trusted your neighbor because you knew that his yard was clean. You knew that when you bought eggs from him, that the chickens weren't in a chicken factory. They were running around scratching in the yard. If you got local beef, if you were a beef eater, it was grazing in the field. It wasn't in a little metal cage. So the production methodologies for food here, for somebody like the hippies, was so clean and healthy that they didn't worry about organic certification either, because they were just doing what was correct. And if you want to sell your product at the store, you have to do organic certification. And it's so expensive that for most people it doesn't work. But the truth of it is that it just means you're following the standards set by the state. And the state, in California says that you should have fluoride in your water. And so, I don't take their opinion too highly when it comes to my health. And I think that what you need to do is you need to educate people on biologically based systems so that they can realize they can be successful. And the problem is that, all the magazines, the shows, they're driven by advertising dollars. That's how they put them on. And that's how they have good quality videos. Like most of the stuff I'm in video wise is stuff that people shot of me. All the coverage all these years was people shot it of me. My own content recently, because I wanted to be able to get the information out, and I realized that the production quality, while it's important, it's more important to get the information out. And so I just started putting content out, not because I'm trying to get noticed. I'm already noticed. It's that I want to get the information into you. And if I can sit down for an hour at my house with an iPad and tell you, look, this is how you sift genetics. This is how we go about biological pest control. This is how we build living soil. And then I can show you success, because most people that say that, the problem is the public won't listen to you because they believe that you're not financially successful too. And so because I have a history of being financially successful, it allows me then to say, hey, this is how I'm doing it. And if you come in person and meet me, you don't find any fraud. You come to the shop and you're like, wow, you really are under the table cleaning this thing with the sponge. You really are using these things. And it allows them to suddenly realize, hey, I too can do this. And as we go forward, the toxins in society are so prevalent that people are becoming more aware. Now you start to have an audience. And I'm not worrying about being covered by a magazine so that on the page behind me is, oh, hang on one sec. Good, they just opened up the door. Otherwise, what it is it's I lose trust. So when I endorse someone's product, it's a product I use. I don't take any advertising money in. I don't have anybody cover me. When I did that whole seed series where I did the 20 seed breeders, I paid for that entire series out of my pocket. And it was really because the seed breeders in the area, I knew they were all going to get wiped out with the coming changes. And I wanted people to understand why it was important to support these small individuals. To me, that's organic. That's the true biology, the living culture that creates the success that we've had. And when you start to get caught up in this commercialism, it's a dumbing down. In order for them to do what they do, they have to take off the edges and only work on that middle. And for you as the consumer, the individual, why would you want to only get a B-level education? Why wouldn't you want the full package? And then you figure out how much of it you need. And so I think that that's really what you're seeing. There's a bunch of us in the cannabis world that are trying to really share information. And I'm not selling any products. I never advertise my nursery. I never advertise what I do in my stores, because I don't want anybody to ever think that that's why I'm doing it. I already have business. I'm known. We've done the successful work. What I want you to be able to do is be able to say, hey, the stuff that this guy's saying makes sense. And then if you look me up, you'll go, wow, he has a history of making sense and dollars. And then it allows them to believe you in a different manner. And it lets me highlight different methodologies and different production situations and different product lines that I think are ethically created. The ownership is solid. They make sense. And that way I'll be able to make a real impact. But as soon as you start to work on the high times concept where, you know, there's an article on page 1 and then the products you're selling are on page 2, all of a sudden, you know, you're losing a believability. And I think that the public is becoming more and more aware of this. I think that we've been lied to so much and so much false news that there's coming a point where there's going to be a paradigm shift on how individuals are marketed to and what's sold and really what is honesty. And I wanted to be able to say, listen, these are things that I use. I never claimed to be the world's foremost expert on any of this. I'm just a really good integrator. I'm somebody that takes anything I can use that I think is positive and I put it together and I make it work. And then I say, hey, this is where I started. This is what we used. Everyone has an evolution. We've all done things we wish we hadn't, but we used the technology we thought was best at that time. And then as we grow, we admit it. We say, hey, I used to do this, but now I learned that it was bad, so I do this. And I'm not afraid to stand behind those time periods because it was an evolution. Like I tell people, when you were little, you used to poop in your underwear, but you don't do that anymore as an adult. But you're not ashamed of it. It's okay.
Right
you used
on.
to poop in your drawers? No. And it lets people realize that there's always this evolution and that even though I'm in my 50s, I'm still evolving. And my desire is to really get people to understand, you know, a better production methodologies and also how to share with each other. Some of this stuff has been taken away, and cannabis is really that incredible tool that allows us to do that. It helps people become better people.
Right on, man. That's really, really admirable. Why do you think that there's a THC phobia? Specifically, I know there's definitely one in Australia, but why do you think people are scared of getting high?
Oh, fundamentally, it's because people don't trust themselves. And so what I notice is that people that don't have any trust in themselves, where they don't believe they're bolted down too firmly, they're like, any drug that makes me not be bolted down is dangerous, because they're not bolted down as it is. And so anybody that used his spirit, and the funny thing is that, you know, the earth was a spiritually driven societal kingdom, and every culture used some form of hallucinogen of some sort to lift to a higher conscious. But we're so dumbed down and taught to be so robotic that anything that makes you not fit into the cookie cutter, anything that doesn't put you into that little segment that you belong in, ooh, deadly. And the politicians did a really good job. The regulators did a good job, because I think they understand it quite well, that when people are using THC, especially at the right level. So THC, you know, too high is almost too powerful for some, but you can go all the way down into a couple percentage points, and it's an incredible mood changer. And all of a sudden you start to see your neighbor is not an enemy. When your neighbor comes by and says, hey, I got some weed, you want to smoke? And you puff a little bit of THC pot and you're both laughing and having a good time. It's kind of hard to be a racist when your black neighbor's smoking pot with you and you enjoy the experience. You start to say, wait a second, maybe we're not so different.
Especially when you're swapping that joint, you know, if you're literally transferring.
Yep. Same saliva, same, you know, I mean, we're talking the last 100 years, where if you were in America, you know, if they still do it. Blacks get in a pool, people want to get out of the pool because they're going to get some contaminant from them. And that's cultivated. And to me, that is a sin. Because what you're doing is you're creating a separation of the human being. And I think that THC has that ability to weave that thread back together. And I think people are terrified of it, because it makes you challenge your own beliefs. It's kind of like when you challenge religious beliefs. It devastates people, because now they have to question many things. And they don't want to question it. They just want to believe and go forward, because it makes it easy to be robotic. But humans were never robotic. That's a creation to keep an easily controlled population. If I dumb you down, I disconnect you, I get you into this, I wake up, I do this, I do that, I go to bed. And never any changes, never any challenge. All things should be challenged. I was in the military, and I don't have any problems with the flag being burned. I wouldn't burn it because it's my flag. But I was in the military, so you had the right to burn the damn thing. Because that's what freedom's about. Freedom of expression, freedom of belief. The only thing I don't want to see happen is you believe that you have the right to infringe on someone else's safety or quality of life. That's something I don't believe in. And cannabis is something that almost never is connected to those two things. So when you're on THC, it's rare that you smoke THC and decide you want to go do something negative to somebody.
This is true.
And when I'm not on cannabinoids, I think many people are far more aggressive. There was a video that happened the other day, and I saw it on. It was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu match, and the two people that were fighting, and there was a huge match. I think there was like maybe 1 million people saw the video now, you know, because it went viral. And these two competitors wrestle. Then they have an actual fight, and they're about to get into a fist fight in the mat at this massive Brazilian competition. And this older black guy comes out and lights up a joint in the middle of the mat, lights it up, tells them both, get over here. They both start smoking. They both hug hands. They both look at each other, and they say, okay, we're all right. And, you know, it was just so poignant, because what he was saying is, hey, let's find a moment to reconnect with each other as men, as human people, and realize there's no need to be violent to each other because we have a disagreement. And cannabis is such a beautiful tool for that, because it doesn't accentuate those parts of your personality. And I'm not anti-alcohol, but alcohol has an ability to really stimulate some different effects in people. And so too do a lot of the other drugs, but cannabis is definitely not one of them. It's not one of them that increase personal violence. And when you can get people to see each other and be friendly and to be kind, all of a sudden you start to have a unified population, and it's hard for you to politically target your demographic, because now you got to target everybody. You actually have to be a representation of a population, not just the 7% that have the money and vote. And I believe that's where the fear of THC comes in, is that it's the substance that takes people and gives them the situation to think freely and to communicate and connect with people freely. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for all the years I've been able to have people to work with. That you can do all this that you want, but I had people that trusted me and they believed in me. And what that did is that allowed me to emotionally sustain the struggle sometimes, because I'm driven. But when you see people benefit from your work, it just fills you with a richness. People like yourself, filmmakers, documentarians, individuals that took the time to say, hey, I'd like to have your opinion, because I'm cautious who I deal with. So I stay, a lot of the stuff that people want me to do and be in, I don't. Because if I don't see a quality in it that there's an elegance, I don't want to participate. And I've been so fortunate that I've had so many elegant experiences, so many rich experiences. And it's really just to say, thank you to the numbers of individuals for all these years that allowed me to have trust and faith, where they said, hey, we'll take a shot.
You just touched on something that I couldn't work out. I couldn't work out why, in my opinion, the most important and educated and inspirational person in cannabis wanted to talk to me. Why? Why'd you take a risk on me, Kev?
Because you knew how to be polite online. And I know that sounds so simple, but for all the years I've been in the industry that I've been in, one of the skills that you have to develop is discernment. And I'm very good at picking up people's intent. And when you make me feel any way uncomfortable, I stay away from you. Unless you need me to help you on like health issue, where I don't have to like you to help you with health. We don't have to get along at all. You don't have to be nice to me. What I realize is that you're struggling under the weight of a health issue, and that it's completely altering your behavior. But on anything that's coverage or introspective look, it's about the people. And you hit me up and said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. And you just had a very easy, open, non-desirous situation where you weren't trying to get into my pocket. You weren't trying to capitalize on it in a way. You said, hey, I want to showcase and highlight some of the beauty of cannabis. And you're somebody that I'm interested in. And I would like to see if we could, maybe develop a friendship. And down the road, we'll do an interview. And so the entire time we're keeping track of each other. Never once are you discourteous. And when I watch your comments online or things you connect to, you're always respectful to people. And to me, that means you're a good human being. And so whether you're high rank or no rank, if you're that person, you have all the rank with me.
Kev, adoration is probably the word. I just had a look at all of your videos that you've recorded, that other people have recorded, that are hours long. So I just realized, fuck, I have watched almost everything this man has released. And I have benefited immensely. My family has benefited immensely from the beautiful knowledge that you've given me about this favorite plant of ours. And mate, from the bottom of my heart, man, you're a fucking legend, mate. And I just want to put that out there and just let you know exactly how I feel, man. And thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the kind words. That was the whole point. I never expected to be covered. I didn't get into this for that. I was in a room with the document. The A&E came in, and they asked me if I wanted to be in a documentary, and I said no, thank you. And they said, "Well, hang out," because we were all hanging out. And they said, "Well, hang out with us while we do the filming." And they filmed a couple of people that came in, and I realized that if I allowed those people to be on tape to represent our culture, we were screwed. And so I said, listen, give me the mic, I'll talk. And from there, it just went wild because the world wanted to play. But it's always the same with me. It's really about the quality of the people I'm with and the intent. Because otherwise, it's a manipulation and it's a malignancy. And that's not how you get people to benefit. It's not about you benefited and then down the road you have to hide from people because they want to throw rocks at you. And I wasn't looking to be in any way well known. I just wanted to be able to share a lifetime of work. and not let it go to the grave, and it kind of worked out.
Definitely. All right. Cool. Well, look, man, I would love to talk to you all day. It's not going to happen. I'm reluctant to hang up because, like I said, I admire you so much, mate. But I think we'll call it quits, man. I know you're extremely busy, and again, I can't thank you enough, Kev. I'll keep you in the loop. I'll make sure that you get to look at the footage before it goes anywhere, as I do with all of my subjects, and you can give it the okay. Thanks, Kev.
Awesome. If you ever got any questions too, man, you know how to hit me up, brother.
I will, man. Thanks, mate. Have a nice day.
Right on, baby. You too.
Holy fuck. Oh my god. Oh my titty fuckers.